Super Smash Bros. Is one of Nintendo's biggest franchises, a celebration of gaming as a whole, and one of the greatest crossovers in history. This series has given us so many opportunities for dream matchups, the likes of which gamers could only dream of, and even included a number of highly requested characters in the latest installment. However, there are still plenty of characters who could be considered unaccounted for, and with it being the 1-year anniversary of the final character reveal for Ultimate, I figure I may as well give my top 10 most wanted characters for the next Super Smash Bros. Game. However, I'll be doing this with a bit of a twist. Many people simply lump all of their most wanted characters into one list, with a lot of the characters on these lists being third-party characters, and all but a few Nintendo characters typically being neglected. So I'll be doing separate lists for Nintendo-owned characters and third-party characters in separate videos. With introductions out of the way, these are the top 10 Nintendo-owned characters I want in Smash. Toad is a major character in Nintendo history, having appeared in most Mario games in some form or another ever since Super Mario Bros. On the NES. These mushroom-headed inhabitants of Peach's Kingdom may not do a lot, but they've been playable in many spin-offs as well as a few main series games, and a certain Captain Toad has made a name for himself and even starred in his own game. In Smash, however, they appear as nothing more than trophies, spirits, background characters, and as part of Peach and Daisy's movesets. Well, I think it's time that the shrill-voiced shorties got a bit of limelight beyond that. While I admittedly can't think of much gameplay elements that would make Toad stand out, I think it would be interesting to pull from Super Mario Bros. 2, where he's the fastest runner but worst jumper. An up special that gives him the propeller from New Super Mario Bros. Wii could be interesting, and of course he'd have to have the same down special as Peach and Daisy. Beyond that, I'm not really sure. Maybe pulling from the spin-off titles would work, but I have ideas regarding that when it comes to another character later on. F-Zero has been infamously neglected by Nintendo over the years. Outside of Smash Bros. And minor cameos in other Nintendo games, it's been nearly 2 decades since this series has seen the light of day. Even Captain Falcon's popularity and meme lord status seemingly hasn't been enough motivation for Nintendo to bring the series back in a new way. Perhaps making another F-Zero character playable in Smash would revitalize interest in the series enough that a new game would finally get made. And I think the best candidate for that role would be the main villain of the series, Black Shadow. In terms of playability, I feel like Black Shadow would probably work as an echo fighter of Captain Falcon, just heavier, harder hitting, and with different effects on his moves. Now, that may just sound like Smash Ganondorf, and that's kind of the point. My reasons for wanting Black Shadow in Smash aren't really due to any attachment to him or his series, and are more due to a desire for Ganondorf to have a more faithful moveset, while giving Smash Ganondorf fans the option to still use that playstyle in some way. Having a character from the same series as Captain Falcon be a moveset clone of him makes much more sense than a completely unrelated character, right? At the very least, Black Shadow would increase the amount of representation for an underutilized series and would be another playable villain, so I don't see any reason to not hope for his inclusion. The Paper Mario games are represented decently well in the Super Smash Bros. Series, with a stage, multiple music tracks, and several trophies and spirits. However, there aren't any playable characters that specifically represent that side series. Sure, characters that appear in that series are playable, but they don't really represent the games in any meaningful way. So what better way to represent the Paper Mario series than with Paper Mario himself? With a plethora of special moves and items that he makes use of, as well as sharing the 2D visual gimmick with Mr. Game & Watch, Paper Mario would definitely be more interesting than just a moveset clone of Mario, and could potentially be one of the more interesting Mario series characters to play as. For those of you who don't know, Super Smash Bros. Was created by the creator of the Kirby series, Masahiro Sakurai. However, for being a series that he directly created, the Kirby series has surprisingly few playable characters in Smash. In fact, there hasn't been a new Kirby character added since Meta Knight and King Dedede back in Brawl, over a decade ago. Granted, there aren't many recurring characters in the series who have a lot of moveset potential, and a number of other characters have had minor roles as trophies, spirits, and assist trophies. That being said, in more recent years, one particular character has risen to prominence and made an impression on the fans, that being Bandana Waddle Dee. One thing in particular that would make Bandana Waddle Dee stand out is his choice of weapon. Outside of a few of Byleth's attacks, Smash doesn't have a playable spear user. While he and Kirby's own spear copy ability only have so many moves in their home games, it's not like other characters with limited amounts of moves haven't had original attacks given to them for Smash itself. In any case, it'd be great to have more Kirby representation, especially for the more recent games. Moveset clone characters have appeared in every installment of Super Smash Bros. Thus far. These characters are typically bonuses thrown in late in development to expand the roster a bit, but they gained a reputation as stealing roster slots from other requested, potentially more unique characters. However, with the rebranding of moveset clones as Echo Fighters in Ultimate, suddenly fans became far more accepting of them, to the point of wanting more of them in the game. There were many characters who were previously seen as undesirable or unviable, now suddenly being seen as potential Echo Fighters. And while I do like some of these suggestions, including one I've already talked about, there's one in particular that really speaks to me. Medusa from Kid Icarus as an echo of Palutena. Medusa on her own doesn't really have a lot of unique moves to pull from in her home games, but making her an echo of Palutena would be a good way of rounding out her moveset. Being a goddess from the same series with a similar frame means this idea could work well, and she'd be both a new female fighter and a new playable villain, both archetypes that Smash fans tend to get excited about. Maybe her special moves could be taken from Palutena's custom specials from Smash 4, instead of copying her base game Ultimate specials, and her final Smash could have her assume her Gorgon-faced form to shoot a petrifying laser. Also, I don't care if you think more Kid Icarus representation would be Sakurai bias. As a Kid Icarus fan, I would love more representation for the series, and for more people to recognize the greatness of Uprising in particular. There's a multitude of Mii sword fighter costumes based on magic-using characters. While this isn't inherently a bad thing, it is kinda weird to see characters who would usually be fighting from a distance using their staff or whatever to whack opponents at a close range. I think the best way to solve this is simple. Make a new Mii fighter type specifically based around magic. Full disclosure, the idea of this Mii mage archetype is at least in part inspired by the mage class from Miitopia. While there may already be a ranged Mii fighter class in the Mii Gunner, their moveset is mostly based around sci-fi tropes. Mii Mage would be more based around fantasy-style combat, shooting fireballs, buffing themselves while debuffing opponents, and generally staying out of reach of their opponent. Not only would a Mii Mage archetype allow for even more creativity with Mii fighters, it would also allow for even more potential characters who can't be playable to become costumes without being an unfitting archetype. Honestly, if we could get more types of Mii fighters in general, that would be just great. The Legend of Zelda is easily one of Nintendo's biggest franchises. Link is considered one of the biggest icons for the company, Zelda is second only to Peach as the most iconic princess in gaming, and there are only a handful of video game villains more well known than Ganondorf. This series is filled to the brim with iconic, beloved, and interesting characters. So why are the only ones playable in Smash just variations on the ones I mentioned? Better yet, why has it been over a decade since we've gotten a new playable Zelda rep in Smash? 2 decades if we're not counting different versions of Link. This is an injustice that must be put to an end. The main problem here is that the majority of viable character suggestions for the Zelda series are already assist trophies, while other popular characters may not have a lot to work with moveset-wise. The Hyrule Warriors version of Impa seems like a good bet, being an iteration of a character spanning as far back as the original Legend of Zelda, but that specific version likely has rights issues similar to Geno from Super Mario RPG, being from a game developed by another company. So, who do I think should be the new Zelda rep? Frankly, at this point, I don't care. I just want any new Zelda character. Hell, I'll even take Tingle. He's a unique recurring character with an identifiable personality, sizable popularity in at least one part of the world to the point he has his own spin-off games, and said spin-off games, as well as his inclusion in Hyrule Warriors, give him the potential for a unique, wacky moveset on the level of Mr. Game & Watch and Duck Hunt. While I know not a lot of people will jive with that suggestion, I just want to illustrate that I am that desperate for a new Zelda character, especially if they're not just another incarnation of a Triforce wielder. Hades is easily the greatest character to be introduced in Kid Icarus Uprising. Anyone who's played the game knows this. Being the true ruler of the underworld, he's arguably responsible for the events of his entire series. He's darkly hilarious while still managing to have a legitimate air of menace, spite, and cruelty, as well as being truly cunning and capable of seeing his plans through. Now, being a character who's not visibly active outside of the final boss fight and a couple of other instances, you might not think of Hades as having a ton of moveset potential, but he does actually have a decent amount of potential moves. With a mix of melee and ranged attacks, he would probably be a unique, well-rounded fighter. Being a character that Sakurai himself had a hand in creating, he should easily be able to fill in the gaps for a potential moveset that's both fitting for the character and fun to play. There's also the fact that he's another Kid Icarus character, so he could appear in new Palutena's Guidance conversations if they were to return. And with how entertaining Hades is, that would only be a positive addition. At the very least, if Hades were to properly appear in Smash, we could get another iteration of this gag.
Hades hits! Hades hits! Hades hits! It's on! Team, unite up! Roger.
The Wonderful 101 is my favorite game from the Wii U, and deserves a hell of a lot more love than it gets. When Smash 4 came out, I was shocked and appalled that the Wonderful 101 had barely any representation within the game, with just 7 trophies of the main characters and 2 music tracks. Ultimate was a good chance to include more content from this game, but if anything, there's less content, with only 2 spirits and the same 2 music tracks. Even after the success of the Kickstarter for the Wonderful 101 Remastered, no additional content from this game was included in any of the DLC. Sure, the game may not be terribly relevant, but when has something like relevance ever hampered a character's chances? At some point, we need a character from the Wonderful 101 in Smash. Of course, the playable character would have to be Wonder Red, and he would have some kind of gimmick where he uses Unite Morph to increase the range and power of his attacks, probably tied to his neutral special. While he may not be able to use the other major Unite Morphs, like Unite Sword and Unite Gun, there is still plenty of moves to pull from to make a viable moveset. Moves like Wonder Stinger, Wonder Cyclone, and Wonder Rising as normal attacks, Unite Rocket as an up special, Unite Guts as a down special counter, Unite Spring or Unite Ball as the side special, and a final smash that utilizes the Platinum Robo would all come together to make a moveset that fully represents the whole team. Really, anything that brings more recognition to this masterpiece of a game is fine by me. And what better way than to get a playable character in Smash? Before I give my number 1 pick, here are some honorable mentions. Dixie Kong from Donkey Kong, Funky Kong from Donkey Kong, Ashley from WarioWare, Crystal from Star Fox, Porky from Earthbound, Magnus from Kid Icarus, Isaac from Golden Sun, and Chibi Robo from Chibi Robo. If you really thought the funny purple man wouldn't appear on this list, I only have one thing to say.
Too bad, Waluigi time!
Waluigi is probably one of the most highly requested characters to become playable in Smash at this point, yet despite so many people wanting him, he continues to be relegated to the status of assist trophy time and time again. Ultimate's slogan of "everyone is here" kinda rings hollow when this guy is still being relegated to an assist trophy. People were pissed when Waluigi wasn't playable in Mario Kart 7, and the same continues to apply to Smash game after game. What exactly is going on behind the scenes to prevent him from finally becoming playable? If it has anything to do with Sakurai doubting the viability of making a moveset for him, Waluigi could easily pull from the Mario Party, Mario Kart, and Mario Sports games that he so frequently appears in. He could throw a dice block that would perform a set effect based on what number is rolled, like Mr. Game & Watch's Judgment. He could use his tennis racket for smash attacks and aerials. Hell, his personality alone would make him a ton of fun to watch. I seriously don't understand why Waluigi hasn't been made playable by now. And if he's not playable in the next Smash game, I shudder to think of the backlash that would ensue from my fellow Waluigi supporters. That'll do it for my top 10 most wanted Nintendo characters in Smash. Remember that this is all my own personal opinion. Just because a character you wanted didn't make the list doesn't make them any less valid of a choice. Maybe leave a comment down below telling us which Nintendo-owned characters you want in Smash. Be on the lookout for my video on the top 10 third-party characters I want in Smash. Maybe subscribe so you don't miss it. See you in the next video. Bye.